I've lost you. I don't think you're still there. Have you gone? Oh no.
It's story time with Mama G. Come and hear a story with me. Love who you want to be, who you are. Learn these lessons and we'll go far. It's story time. Story time. Story time with Mama G.
Hello!
Hello, Mama G!
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me, Lauren.
I love that you've actually taken Mama G because that is me. So I am a mum and my surname begins with G. So I'm like, I feel like you are who I'm going to become.
I like that. I like that I'm giving people ambition because I've recently discovered that Goldie Hawn is called Mama G by her daughter, Kate Hudson. So I'm going to have to aspire to be Goldie Hawn, that means, which is, rather exciting and very achievable. I'm just looking forward to that being in my future.
You're going to wake up one day.
And I've had loads of plastic surgery and lots of blonde hair. I can't wait.
So, Mama G, when, how, who, what?
Well, despite how old I look, I came into being in 2018 at the Brighton Fringe, and I'm a storytelling pantomime dame. And what I do is I go all over the country, normally, obviously not during quarantine times. I go all over the country telling children and their families stories about being who you are and loving who you want. And I go to theatres, schools, libraries, nurseries, festivals, museums, bookshops, anywhere that will have me, quite frankly, and get to tell lots of fun stories.
And they are so fun. I watched one last night. Well, I watched two last night, and then I thought, my child is in bed. But it is for the whole family. I was engrossed.
Absolutely.
Harry went walking one bright sunny day, looking for someone to help on the way. But the village was quiet. No people around, no planes in the sky, no children to be found. Finally, Harry saw a nurse in a mask. What's happening here? I'm sorry to ask. Some people are poorly, and if we go out, we'll pass on the germs and spread them about.
And I get that a lot. I get a lot of mums especially messaging during the live story times that I've been doing on Facebook during the pandemic, messaging saying, I'm not here with the children, I've got a glass of wine, I'm having a lovely time. And actually, I think there's something about telling the stories that I do that is really good for adults and for adults to hear them as well, because quite often adults, I don't know how old you are, my darling, you look considerably younger than I am, but adults who are our ages or in our ballpark have rarely been told stories that it's okay to be who you are, and that they've not often seen themselves in the center of a story, because we get told about princes and princesses falling in love and all of that. So a lot of people have grown up not hearing stories about them. So quite often adults are just as pleased to hear the stories as the kids are. I think it's really important because as we're seeing, this year especially with like the Black Lives Matter movement and things happening in America with the election and stuff, and the increasing rise of homophobia and transphobia across the globe, a lot of this is happening because children weren't educated, and then they grew up into adults who believed certain things that to most of us are wrong. So if we start educating children when, they're children, and however that is, whether it's at school or through their books, then hopefully they grow up to be adults that understand that everyone can live the life they want to lead and that everyone's wonderful. And I'm just a tiny cog of that, hopefully.
Oh, massive part, definitely. Okay, so inspiration then for Mama G. Where did the inspiration come from?
Well, in 2018, let me take you back, was quite a low year for me, and I didn't have a lot going on. I'd made some big changes in my life, stopped working for certain people that I'd worked for a long time, and I was sort of just floating around, doing my own thing, but not getting very far. And then one of my friends said that I should write stories because I enjoy writing pantomime scripts. And so I decided to write a story about two fairies called Fran and Vera, who argue over who their friend Billy should fall in love with. And my friend read it and she said, it's very good. So what do you do now? And I thought, I've got no idea. So I went on to BuzzFeed, as you do, to see how you publish books. And the thing you should do out of like 20 was read the story to children. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to find some children to read this to. Now, at the time, I was producing a pantomime at the Brighton Fringe called Mother Goose. And historically, Mother Goose is a storyteller. So I thought, and I was playing Mother Goose, you see. So I thought, well, if Mother Goose is a storyteller, then she's the perfect person to tell this story. So I got in touch with some cafes and bookshops in Brighton, called myself Mama G because I wanted to sound, trendier. Whether I worked or not, I don't know. And then went into these places and ostensibly publicized the panto, but also started my flourishing, glittering career as a storyteller. And then from there, I was very lucky because people seemed to be very excited and interested in what I do. So I did Pride in London at the Unicorn Theatre, which is very exciting. And I worked for Foyles, and I've worked for Disney and HSBC and lots of Pride festivals, and met lots of wonderful families along the way.
So Mama G is kind of a take on Mother Goose?
Yes. Oh, yes, there's history and justification for everything, you see.
Wow. Okay, so going back to, because you mentioned Disney, and again, since having our child, we've started to notice that Disney is changing their ways. But if you go back to not even that far, they are known for their like typical princess, prince, boy, girl, everything's a love story. So how do you feel about that?
Well, it's difficult with Disney, isn't it? Because we all know they're problematic, but we also all love them. And I'm yet to find someone who wasn't very excited by Disney Plus becoming a thing. But I think, I love The Little Mermaid and I love Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. But what has happened is that means that lots of people have grown up thinking that love only exists in a particular way and thinking that you can only find love if you're beautiful. I'm saying that every bad thing we think about ourselves, probably comes from Disney in some way. Although if they want to employ me again, then I didn't say that. But I think it's very exciting the way that Disney is changing now, because the recent film that came out, Onward, which is a very good film. I don't know if you've watched it, but it's got a transgender character in it, which is really exciting. And the most exciting thing about it is addressed, but then they don't make a big thing about it, that the character is allowed to exist in the world of the movie, which is incredibly exciting. And it's quite shocking to think that when The Princess and the Frog came out, there was such a big fuss about Princess Tiana being the first Black Disney princess. And it's shocking because I was surprised I hadn't noticed. And I was then equally surprised that it took until 2000, whenever it was. But I'm very excited that Disney are moving forward and that they're opening up the world to lots and lots of different and wonderful people.
Okay, so your career then, when did your career start pre-Mama G?
Pre-Mama G, I went to Rose Bruford College, which is in Sidcup in Kent. My colleague Amy is proudly wearing the T-shirt today to paint in, no judgment there. And we also studied at Stephen F. Austin State University, which is in a town called Nacogdoches in Texas. And we did theatre there. And I was so obsessed with pantomime, I even put a pantomime on briefly in Texas. It took quite a lot of persuading them to understand what it was. And then when I graduated, the first thing I wanted to do was go into pantomime. So I wrote letters to every single pantomime company that I'd heard of. And a company called Extravaganza Productions replied, and they employed me to be the assistant stage manager. So the very first pantomime I did was at the Middlesbrough Theatre, which is in Middlesbrough, with Helga from A Lower Low. And the Dame was played by the very first person to ever appear on ITV. So you can imagine he was very, very old. And I played an innkeeper and I think third witch, and it was Sleeping Beauty, and it was absolutely magical. And I understudied all the people in it, but I was particularly good at understudying the pantomime dame. And because he was so old, we quite often got to the point where it looked like I was going to have to go on. But I never did. But the next year, the producers invited me back, and they specifically asked for me to understudy the dame, which was a thrill. And then the following year, they asked me back, and this time to play Ugly Sister. And that's where it all started. And
so it really has always been like that sort of character then?
Oh, absolutely. I can remember when we were at college, one of our tutors had us all in a circle and was talking to us about the roles we really wanted to play, what our dream roles would be and what we were going to aim for. And a lot of my friends, well, some of them said, I want to play Willy Loman from Death of a Salesman. And others said, I want to be Stanley Kowalski in Streetcar Named Desire. Somebody probably said they wanted to be Lady Macbeth. And when they got to me, I said, Widow Twankey. And I think everyone laughed, but as far as I know, I'm one of the few from our group that has achieved that, what they said they were going to, in that class anyway. So it's always been about being the pantomime dame for me.
Follow your dream. I'm interested in the process then. You said that you write and you've written shows, and obviously Eunice, we'll talk about Eunice in a minute. What is the process between pen and paper and production?
Okay. Whew, that's a big question.
Sorry.
So what happens between the start of the process and the end is usually we'll be contacted by a theatre or a company that wants to put on a pantomime. So we've done a few pantomimes for Antic Pubs, which is a pub chain in London. And I also write pantomimes for Haven Holidays. So usually they'll approach me and say, we'd like this pantomime. So if a company gets in touch and says they want Mother Goose, I then have to ask the question, how many people do you want to be in it? How much money have you got to spend? How long do you want it to be? How many songs do you want? What are you trying to achieve from putting on this show? And then once they've answered those questions, I'll start writing it. And that writing a pantomime is generally quite easy because you already know what the story's going to be. And every pantomime character plays a specific role in the story, no matter what the plot is. So the pantomime dame always serves the same function. We'll always have an opening spot. We'll always do some comedy routines. The baddie will always obviously serves the same purpose. So then you just sort of fit all the jigsaw puzzles together. Sometimes you might take an old script and update it. So you add in more topical references. And it's very funny how quickly references become not topical. We found a script from Mother Goose that we did a few years ago, well, in 2018, where we had a joke about Boris Johnson being the foreign secretary. And we thought that was as bad as it got. Little did we know, we can't joke about him anymore because it's too painful. And then from there, you work out, once you know your cast, you work out who you'd like to be in it. And I do, as often as I can, try to work with people that I know, because then it's easier to write for them as well. Then you work out the scenery, you work out what songs you want to put in. If it's a production for somebody else, then they can do all the legwork in terms of all of that and the publicizing it. But if it's a show that we're producing ourselves, and by we, I mean Petite Pantos, which is the company that I run, then we have to get publicity. We have to work out what we want the posters to look like. We have to work out how we're going to get people in to review it, what we can say about it, any photos we need to get done, where we're going to get costumes from. It's a lot of work, but I love it.
So do you hire in costumes or do you have them made?
We do a mix of both. If I'm absolutely honest, I share a storage unit with my friend James, who runs Lemon Jelly Creative. And he also does pantomimes and things. So quite often, James and I will share costumes. And I have been known to write scripts knowing what James has in his store, with my fingers crossed that he's not going to be using them at the same time. And also, I've written scripts for James, so that makes it easier. Some of the costumes we get made, so the pantomime dame costumes will likely get made. Some of them we buy on eBay if we know what we're looking for. And some, well, I work very closely with the Unicorn Theatre, which is a theatre for children in London. And they are very, very generous, and they quite often let us use costumes from their store. So we do a lot of begging, borrowing, no stealing, but we're close to it sometimes. So yes, that's the process, I suppose.
Amazing. So in terms of songs then, are they like songs that everyone knows, or do you have someone that writes the songs as well?
Well, for the pantomimes, we tend to use songs that everybody knows because that's what the audiences tend to enjoy the most. Although even then, choosing songs that everyone knows is very difficult, and we quite often end up with songs that I like. Which I'm not against. And I think we put in Dolly Parton, or sometimes we had RuPaul once, which went down really well. Last year we tried to put in a lot more modern songs. We had Billie Eilish and Dua Lipa, and actually that did go down quite well. So we would probably try and pursue that course of action again. When we do my own show, so when it's a Mama G show, I've got songs that have been written for me. My own songs, and if you go to my YouTube channel, you can see some of the music videos we've done for them. They're really fun, and they're written by a lovely lady called Joanna Taylor. And this is a nice segue because Joanna Taylor is writing the music and lyrics for Eunice, the musical, which we're starting to produce, which is on in a couple of weeks from the time we're talking, but will have been finished, I think, by the time this airs. But hopefully look out in 2021. We'll be hoping to do more productions of it.
Yeah, so you're currently building the set now for Eunice. The set's going up.
Yes, so my colleague Amy, who's from Rose Bruford with me, we've spent the morning moving scenery around the Stanley Halls and emptying our cars of all sorts of things. We've got a garden gate that I'm looking at. We've got some boxes that are going to become hay bales. We've got lots and lots of flats. We've got some boots. We've got a backpack with wings on. We've got all sorts of, and we've got a rubber pigeon, which I'm not sure what we're going to do with that, but we liked it. That came from the unicorn. I don't know what they had it for either, actually. So we're painting the set this week, and then we're going to have a read through of the show tonight. So we're going to have all the cast meeting each other for the first time, which is very exciting. And we're going to see if it all works, and hopefully it does.
What's the rehearsal process time?
Well, it's 4 days. We have 4 days to put on a brand new musical, which I know it's shocking. You can't see this, listeners, but Lauren's jaw is on the ground. The reason it's 4 days is because originally we were going to put on a pantomime, and pantomimes actually thrive on a very short rehearsal period. And our pantomime was going to be a bit shorter than the normal ones, and I have a much smaller cast, so I didn't think that we needed as many people. But then when COVID happened, we decided that the pantomime, we decided it might be a bit too ambitious in terms of the expenditure. So we just decided to put on a new musical instead, as you do. So we've got a 4-day rehearsal period, which is why we're having a read through tonight so that we can make sure that everything works, so that in 2 weeks when we start rehearsals, everyone knows exactly what's going on and what's going to be expected of them. Now, again, because of COVID, we have been afforded a little more time because we had planned to do some schools performances. But for obvious reasons, we're not going ahead with those anymore because schools are understandably reticent about coming out in big groups. So we are able to use some of those days to rehearse still, but we're also going to be rehearsing to live stream the performance. So we're going to rehearse the show and then re-rehearse it and then open the show in its original format. And then at the very end of the show's run, do the live stream that we rehearsed the week before. It's going to be very exciting.
So exciting. I've got tickets.
You've got tickets?
Yeah.
Wonderful. When are you coming to see it?
I knew that was going to be the next question. The weekend before Christmas.
Oh, perfect.
That 18th, 19th, that weekend.
Yes, brilliant. It's almost sold out that weekend. So it's lucky that you got tickets. And of course, you've got tickets because you're coming to see your sister.
Yeah. And you. And support you. Yeah.
Yes, and support us. So thank you. But your sister's going to be marvelous because, as you know, your sister and I have a mutual obsession with each other. And your sister, in fact, when we did Mother Goose in Brighton, your sister played Donald Trump. And she did a marvelous job. And I think she even vogued as Donald Trump, which was marvelous. And this year in Eunice, she's going to be playing a horse, a pig, a sheep, and a cow.
Wow.
She's very versatile.
Oh, and I already knew that, but I don't know. Animals is like a new direction now. This is just adding to her string.
Oh, absolutely. And her many strings because she plays so many instruments as well.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, she's
Absolutely
incredible.
ridiculous.
And we're very fortunate that she's going to be in our show. We're very excited.
Eunice is all about a unicorn as well, isn't it?
It is. It's actually about a horse called Eunice. The original story is one of Mama G's, and it's called Eunice the horse, and it's about a horse who knows that they're not a horse, but they can't work out what they're supposed to be. So they go on a journey around their animal sanctuary with their friend Hortense, who Katie is going to be playing. And eventually, Eunice discovers at the end of the story that she is a unicorn. And everybody on the animal sanctuary, all the animals have helped her realize that, and they all help her become a unicorn. And because Eunice the horse doesn't sound quite right, but Eunice the unicorn sounds absolutely perfect.
All makes sense.
It all makes sense. And it's a really, even though I wrote it, I will say it's a very lovely story. And it's very heartwarming. And the songs that Joanna's written are beautiful. There's a gorgeous one called Touch the Sky, which is about Eunice realizing that she's more than she thinks she is.
Say what you're supposed to say. Stand tall and proud, but don't ever give it away. Disappear into the crowd. Be the best that you can be. But when it counts, there's not too many times you can fail. Before you start to lose your bounce, I'm safe here in the ordinary, safe and sound. But safe can be just a little bit scary if your feet don't leave the ground. I was born without wings, but I will fly. Although I'm grounded now, I know I'll get there if I try. Down here I can't be, up there I could be free. If I can touch the sky.
I think people are going to really enjoy the show. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Definitely. So Eunice was a story that you wrote previously. So you've got a book of Eunice.
Yeah, well, it's a story that I perform. So she's
Oh, okay.
available in one of my books of short stories, which are available on Amazon and through the petitepantos.com website. But yes, it's a story that I perform, but she's so popular. Whenever I do it, everyone absolutely loves it, because when I tell the story, I use puppets, and we always sing Old MacDonald Had a Farm to meet the new characters. And everyone loves unicorns because unicorns are so hopeful and magical. And I think everyone believes deep down that they're a unicorn, because everyone thinks they're something greater than they appear, because we all are, of course. Yeah. And so kids always love it. So when it became apparent that we thought we couldn't do a pantomime, the venue said to us, well, have you got another show you'd like to do? And we said, oh, we've got a story about a unicorn that we think would work. And it's really coming to life.
I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I can't wait.
I hope you enjoy it. You'll have to let me know.
Of course, I will. Obviously, I'll enjoy it. But yeah, of course. If I get to speak to you again, then yes, I'll let you know.
Perfect.
To round things off, do you have any embarrassing, funny, show must go on sort of stories, or any like disastrous auditions?
Well, I am always in embarrassing situations, and when I see them happening on stage, I tend to encourage them to happen as well, because I really enjoy them and I love it when things go wrong. As a kid, when I went to the theatre, my favourite part of any show was when something went wrong. So I think the most embarrassing thing that's happened to me on stage is once when I was doing pantomime in Gravesend, I was dressed as a picnic table. And it was weird because actually the dress that was underneath it was like this nice, like 1940s pin dress, and I looked marvelous in it. But then they hung 2 circles of MDF around me with tablecloths on, and they put cupcakes around them.
Love that.
And it was a really cool outfit. But one of the cupcakes fell off and it fell into the orchestra pit. And I'm not that logical sometimes, so I thought, well, I know what I'll do. I'll just bend down and pick it up. I'll just get them to pass the cupcake up to me. So I leant down into the orchestra pit to get the cupcake, and I couldn't quite reach it. So I thought, well, I'll just sit on the edge of the stage and I'll get it from there. So I did that. But as I was trying to reach with my feet to pick up the cupcake, I slipped, and the circles of MDF got caught between the stage and on the drum kit, and my little legs were just dangling in the middle. And so I was suspended in midair, and I couldn't get up because I couldn't get enough leverage on the stage. And the audience were howling with laughter. It was very funny. And all the orchestra had to literally lift me up. But it went on for so long because they couldn't all get a good grip on me that eventually the audience were just staring at us. This picnic table stuck in an orchestra pit that's no longer funny. But yeah, that's probably the most embarrassing thing that's happened to me. But I trip over on stage all the time. Like we're backstage in this theatre, the Stanley Halls in Norwood, and there are doors that are not human size and lead to corridors that don't appear to go anywhere.
Can you give us a little tour?
Basically, this is the scene dock, and you see that silver thing. That was a doorway that's now just in the middle of the wall. And that we think went to the orchestra pit. We think the stage is above us, so that the ceiling is the stage, we think.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very glamorous though, isn't it?
Very. Anything coming up in the new year to get us excited about?
Oh yes, well we're doing a pantomime in the Lion and Unicorn Theatre in North London. We're doing Little Red Riding Hood, and I'm playing all 3 of Little Red Riding Hood's grannies, and then the baddie is 2020, which is going to be lots of fun. And then if people just have a look on Mama G's social media on Facebook and Instagram, I always post where I'm going to be performing and my tour dates up there, because hopefully next year we'll be able to go back into theatres again.
Will you keep doing your Mama G readings online?
I think so, because they're quite popular, but I really like being with a physical audience, so we might do them every so often for special occasions.
Yeah.
What an amazing day! It was all beyond their wildest dreams, but it was time to hit the hay. Pedro nuzzled into a blanket. Enrico blocked out the light. Tomorrow would be another adventure, but for now, they said, night-night. That was a right royal road trip by Susie Violet, and with illustrations by Alex.
I guess you get to reach a wider audience with them, especially young families that can't necessarily travel all the way to London.
And that's been one of the benefits of the pandemic, dare I say it, is that I've been able to spread my reach and have more people find me, which has been marvellous. And so hopefully now when I'm able to tour again, there are people around the country who will be excited to see me.
Everyone should be excited to see you.
Yes! I'll quote you on that.
Thank you so much again, and have a fun rest of your day building set and reading through for Eunice.
Thank you, see you soon.
Bye. It takes every colour to make a rainbow. It takes just one sparkle to make a star. If we fill the world with every colour, we can all become the stars that we are. We can all become the stars that we are.